In the affluent neighborhood of Laurel Canyon, Los Angeles, the Carrington family appeared picture-perfect. John Carrington, a successful lawyer, and his wife Emma lived in a spacious two-story home with their two children, Lily and Max. To the outside world, they were the epitome of stability and success. But beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to form in Emma's life. Emma had long since abandoned her dream of becoming an artist, choosing instead to support John's career and take care of their children. The monotony of her life had become suffocating. Day after day, she found herself alone, her world shrinking into the confines of her home. The excitement and passion that once defined her relationship with John had fizzled into routine gestures, empty kisses, brief conversations, and nights spent apart even when they were in the same house. Then there was Ryan, the 23-year-old son of their neighbors, the Jensens. Ryan had moved back in with his parents for the summer after graduating from college. He was charming, confident, and carried a carefree energy that Emma found impossible to ignore. He spent his days jogging through the neighborhood, often catching Emma's eye as she watered her garden or walked the family dog. Their interactions started innocuously enough. Emma would wave at Ryan when she saw him outside, and occasionally they'd exchange pleasantries. But there was an undeniable chemistry between them, a spark that Emma hadn't felt in years. It wasn't long before their casual chats turned into something more. One humid afternoon, while John was working late, Ryan came over to offer his help, fixing a broken fence in the backyard. Emma was hesitant, but she couldn't resist the chance to spend more time with him. They worked side by side, laughing as they fumbled with the tools. Ryan was different. He listened to her in a way that John hadn't in years. He made her feel seen, desired. After finishing the work, they shared a bottle of wine on the patio, the sun setting behind the Hollywood hills. The air was thick with tension, and before Emma knew it, she was in Ryan's arms, kissing him with a passion she had forgotten existed. It was impulsive, reckless, but exhilarating in a way she couldn't explain. In that moment, she felt alive. But the story doesn't end there. Their affair quickly intensified. What began as stolen kisses became late-night encounters when John was away on business or when the kids were at school. Emma knew it was wrong. Ryan was nearly half her age, but the thrill of being desired again was too intoxicating to resist. She hadn't felt this way in years, and she didn't want it to stop. Ryan, for his part, was completely captivated by Emma. She was older, confident, and experienced in ways that excited him. He had been with girls his own age before, but there was something about Emma that made him feel invincible. He became infatuated with her, daydreaming about a future where they could be together without hiding. He began suggesting that Emma leave John, that they run away together and start fresh. But Emma wasn't ready for that. The affair continued, but the secrecy began to weigh on Emma. She became more distant at home, making excuses to avoid intimacy with John, pulling away from the life they had built together. The guilt was suffocating her. At night, after her passionate meetings with Ryan, she would lie awake, consumed with fear. What if someone found out? What if John discovered the truth? She couldn't bear the thought of destroying her family. Ryan, however, became increasingly impatient. He didn't just want their hidden moments of passion. He wanted Emma all to himself. He began pressuring her to make a decision. "Leave him," he would say. "We can be happy together. You don't need him." But Emma knew deep down that this was a fantasy. She couldn't just walk away from her life. She had children to think about, a reputation to uphold. Her life with John wasn't perfect, but it was stable, and stability was something she wasn't willing to risk. One night, as they lay together in the dimly lit bedroom of a cheap motel outside the city, Ryan pressed her again. "Emma, we need to stop hiding. This isn't enough anymore. I want more. I want you." His voice was firm, but his eyes were pleading. Emma felt trapped. She didn't want to lose Ryan, but the idea of leaving John terrified her. "I can't," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I can't just leave. It's not that simple." Ryan sat up, frustration flashing in his eyes. "It's always excuses with you. I love you, Emma, but I'm not going to be your secret forever." The tension between them grew unbearable. Emma tried to calm him down, but Ryan was already pulling on his clothes, storming out of the motel room without another word. She thought it was over, that maybe he had finally realized this affair couldn't last. She sat in the silence of the room, her mind racing with thoughts of what she had done, what she stood to lose if the truth came out. But Ryan wasn't done, not by a long shot. The next day, Emma received a text from Ryan. "We need to talk. Meet me at my house after 7. No excuses. Emma's heart raced as she read the message. She knew this couldn't end well, but part of her was too entangled to stop. She couldn't just cut Ryan off, not after everything that had happened between them. That evening, Emma told John she was going to visit a friend and made her way to Ryan's house. When she arrived, the house was dark, except for a single light in Ryan's bedroom. As she walked up the driveway, her heart pounded in her chest. Something felt wrong. When Ryan opened the door, there was a coldness in his eyes that Emma hadn't seen before. He didn't speak, just stepped aside to let her in. Emma's nerves tightened as she followed him into the dimly lit room. "What's going on?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Ryan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked over to the window, staring out into the quiet suburban street. "You're going to leave him?" he said, his voice low and menacing. "You're going to leave John, or I'll make sure he finds out everything." Emma froze, her blood running cold. "What?" "Ryan, you can't be serious." But he was. Ryan turned to face her, his expression hard. "I'm not playing games, Emma. Either you leave him or I'll destroy everything you have." Emma's breath caught in her throat as Ryan's words sank in. This wasn't the Ryan she had come to know, the carefree, charming young man who made her feel alive. The man standing before her now was dangerous, and she could see the cold determination in his eyes. "Ryan, you can't do this," she stammered, her voice trembling. "Please think about what you're saying. This isn't right." Ryan stepped closer, his jaw clenched. "I'm done waiting, Emma. I gave you time, but you keep stringing me along. I love you, but if you won't choose me, I'll make sure John knows everything. He deserves to know what kind of wife he's married to." Panic surged through Emma's veins. She had been playing with fire, but she hadn't expected it to burn her life to the ground. "You don't understand," she pleaded, backing away. "John will take the kids. He'll ruin me. Please, Ryan, don't do this." But Ryan was unmoved. He grabbed her arm, his grip tight and unyielding. "You're going to leave him," he said through gritted teeth. "And we'll be together, or I'll tell him everything tonight." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes as the reality of her situation hit her. She had never intended for it to go this far. She had wanted to feel something again, to escape the dullness of her life. But now everything was spiraling out of control. She could feel the walls closing in around her. I need time," she whispered, trying to buy herself a moment to think. "Please, Ryan, let's just calm down and talk about this." Ryan's grip loosened, but the anger in his eyes didn't fade. "You have until tomorrow," he growled. "If you're not ready to leave by then, I'll make sure John knows everything. You don't want to see what happens when he finds out." Emma nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She turned and quickly left the house, her mind racing with fear and confusion. As she drove home, she tried to think of a way out, but every option seemed worse than the last. John was a good man, but if he found out about the affair, it would destroy him and their family. She couldn't let that happen. But she also knew Ryan wasn't bluffing. He was serious, and if she didn't make a decision, her entire life would unravel before her eyes. The next day, Emma couldn't focus. She barely ate, her mind consumed by the impending doom of Ryan's ultimatum. Every time her phone buzzed, she jumped, fearing it was a message from him. By the time evening came, she knew she had to confront him again. She couldn't let him destroy her family, but she also couldn't bring herself to end everything with John. She arrived at Ryan's house just as the sun was setting, casting an eerie orange glow over the street. The tension in the air was palpable as she knocked on his door, her hands shaking. Ryan opened the door, his expression unreadable. "So?" he asked, his voice low. "Have you made your decision?" Emma stepped inside, her mind spinning. She needed to find a way to defuse the situation. "Ryan, I need more time," she said, her voice shaky but trying to sound calm. "I can't just leave John like this. It's not that simple." Ryan's eyes narrowed and his jaw clenched again. "I told you, Emma. No more excuses." Emma's heart raced as she felt the walls closing in again. She needed to get out of this, but Ryan wasn't giving her any options. Her mind scrambled for a solution, and then, in a moment of panic, she blurted out, "I'll tell John myself. I'll do it tonight. Just give me a chance to explain it to him first." Ryan stared at her for a long moment, and for a brief second Emma thought he might agree. But then, his face twisted in anger. "You think I'm stupid," he hissed, stepping closer. "You're just trying to get rid of me. You're never going to leave him." Emma backed away, her breath quickening. "Ryan, please," she begged. "Let's just talk about this." But Ryan wasn't listening anymore. In a sudden, violent burst of anger, he lunged at her, grabbing her by the shoulders and shaking her. "You lied to me," he shouted, his voice filled with rage. "You used me, Emma. You were never going to leave him." Emma struggled in his grip, her heart pounding in terror. She tried to break free, but Ryan's hold was too strong. "Let me go," she screamed, her voice filled with fear. And then, in the chaos, Ryan's hands moved to her throat. His fingers tightened around her neck, cutting off her air. Emma gasped, her hands clawing at his arms, but his grip only grew stronger. Her vision blurred as the room spun around her. She could feel her life slipping away, panic surging through her as she realized he wasn't going to stop. Desperate, she reached out blindly, her hand landing on a nearby lamp. With the last of her strength, she swung it at his head, the heavy base connecting with a sickening thud. Ryan staggered back, momentarily stunned, and Emma fell to the floor, gasping for breath. Dazed and disoriented, Ryan stumbled toward her, blood trickling down his forehead. You'll pay for this," he growled, his voice slurred with rage. He reached for her again, but Emma was quicker this time. In a moment of sheer panic, she grabbed a pair of scissors from the table and plunged them into his chest. Ryan let out a guttural scream, stumbling backward, clutching at the wound as blood poured from his chest. His eyes were wide with shock, as if he couldn't believe what had just happened. He collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air, his body convulsing as the life drained from him. Emma stood frozen, her hand still gripping the scissors, her mind unable to process what she had just done. The aftermath was swift. Emma knew she couldn't hide what had happened. In a daze, she called 911, her voice trembling as she told the dispatcher that there had been an accident. The police arrived within minutes, the flashing lights illuminating the dark street as officers swarmed the house. Emma was taken into custody, her hands shaking as they placed her in the back of the squad car. She could barely comprehend what was happening. Everything had spiraled out of control so quickly, and now her life was in ruins. In the days that followed, the truth came out. The affair, the threats, the murder, everything was laid bare for the world to see. John was devastated, unable to comprehend how his seemingly perfect life had fallen apart so completely. He took the kids and left, filing for divorce almost immediately. Emma's trial was brief. The evidence was clear, and her confession sealed her fate. She was sentenced to 15 years for manslaughter. The once quiet neighborhood of Laurel Canyon was left reeling from the tragedy, the perfect suburban facade shattered beyond repair. In the end, there were no winners, only survivors.